Hello everyone, today we have the builds I think a lot of people have been asking for. Spider-Man is my main and by far one of my most perfect build. I have spent a lot of time grinding the perfect rolls and saving this video so I can make Spidey as good as he can possibly be. So, for Spidey I am actually going to split up into two parts. This video you are watching right now is going to be just a general build video showing all my gear and will be just like the rest of my build videos, but for part 2 I want to go through each raid encounter showing what I switch up into my build to make him as strong as possible. Before we jump into the build, I actually want to break down this Elite Claw 1 phase as it will hopefully help people understand why I make certain decisions when building my Spidey. Shout out to Young Hoff again playing as Panther in this clip, and also shout out to VA also in this clip, as having a Thor makes these 1 phases much more consistent. So, Thor just needs to hold R1 to keep the cryo on, so he will not be contributing a whole lot of the total damage to this 1 phase, but it's vital he is there to get the 1 phase. So, after this clip I actually went through frame by frame and calculated every single damage number me and Hoff did, which is what you are seeing on screen right now. So you can see Hoff did a total of around 5.3 million and I was just short of 4 million, with VA probably making up what was left to get to around 10 million health or whatever Elite Claw has. So, as you can see, I have documented each time I hit Claw and what type of damage it was and how much it hit for. As you can see by the percentages at the bottom, the drone made up for almost 75% of the damage. I did only get off one good heavy combo in this clip and it did 650,000 damage. Meanwhile, after almost 2 full melee combos, the melee hits only hit for 300,000. So, when building Spidey, hopefully this can spell out where we need to focus our stats and perks. Let's start with what kind of stats you want to be aiming for. In this video I am going to be showing a couple of different builds, but in almost every Spidey build you want as much Valor as you can possibly get. The drone is Spider-Man's best friend and does a lot of heavy lifting damage wise, so as much Valor as you can get is always advised. The might and precision however are kind of complicated. For mob clearing you don't really need a whole lot of precision and it can mostly be ignored. However, when it comes to bosses, Spidey cannot deal a good amount of damage without a good amount of precision. This is because the heavy combo finisher is one of Spidey's best moves for dealing boss damage, and it scales with precision and Valor only, and as you saw from that damage breakdown, our heavy combo finisher is going to deal way more damage than any melee hits, so for bosses you can throw all that might out the window as it isn't doing a lot. However, for the rest of your raid where you will be doing takedowns and a lot more melee combat, you will need that might. So in my opinion the best way to set up your Spidey is in a hybrid setup like you are seeing here. This way your crits will be high, the drone will be hitting hard, and you still have plenty of base stats into your might and precision for your attacks to deal decent damage. Spidey also has the luxury of doing this as he doesn't need a lot of defense, as he has all his Spider Sense related perks and easy access to takedowns. The same goes for proficiency. Spider-Man can get super high crit chance just built straight into his skills, so you can run him at 0 if you want, but anything over 100 is just overkill and a waste of stats. Finally, intensity like always still has super diminishing returns, so you don't really need any of it, but one of Spidey's best pieces has it on, so you will always end up with a little bit, which is fine. Spidey is not one of the top DPS option in the game and neither is Panther, but you have it right here. Both of these characters easily 1 phasing Claw with a bit of help from Thor, which I hope can show people you don't need to be playing the meta top options to succeed in this game, and the right build is all it takes. So let's jump into it. I am going to start with the public Menace slot 3. If after watching that 1 phase you are still not convinced, you are nuts. I would compare this piece to any Hawkeye gear with split multiplier on it. Using this turns Spidey into a whole new animal. I have used and shown this for builds on the past, but previously it has never worked with raid gear, but in the current patch that is fixed and it was a game changer for Spidey. For anyone unfamiliar with this piece, the main perk we are using this for is is the Spider Drone Status Edition perk. Usually, the drone will only apply the web status when it shoots enemies, but with this perk it will take the status you have on your slot 2 ranged piece and apply it to the drone. This opens up the door for the drone to deal battery damage and get buffed by Tachin Surge, which even if you are new to the game, you probably know how powerful and even necessary battery damage is. This piece drops from vaults, so you can acquire it very easily and can only roll with either resolve, resilience or intensity. I know this goes against the rule of wanting as much valor as possible, but the ability to deal battery damage trumps the small amount of damage stats we lose. Plus, the defensive stats this piece comes with are all you will need, so it lets you go all out damage stats on the other pieces. So, what other gear pieces shall we use? For the slot 1 I have a couple of different options depending on what content you are playing, but before we jump into this, I do want to explain something I think a lot of people don't know and are getting confused about. In the Elite raid, just having Vibranium status applied to an enemy is not enough, the actual damage source needs to be Vibranium as well. I think this is one of the main mistakes I see happening with raid builds. This only applies to the red Sonic, Klaue minions and to Klaue himself, but if you hit them with something not Vibranium like Sonic or Cosmic or whatever, you will deal almost half the damage you should, even if you have already applied Vibranium with a payload or from a teammate. This mistake seems to be very common on Spider-Man builds, as people will use some sort of Vibranium payload and then Sonic or whatever other cold status on his drone. While this works amazing everywhere else in the game against Klaue and in the raid, it's not very good. You are literally better off doing no battery damage and just going pure Vibranium. So, with that understood, hopefully you will understand why I give up perks like Tachin Surge and use gear with Vibranium on instead. One of the weaknesses of Spidey is his inability to set up cold statuses on Klaue, so you generally have to rely on your teammates for that, or there is a little trick you can do to auto battery I will leave at the end of this video. So here we have this slot 1 that is pretty basic. For starters, it has excellent all-round stats with might, precision and valor all super high. If you are newer to the game, your stats won't be able to go this high anymore, but it won't make a huge difference to your damage. For Spidey, the only real useful place to have statuses is on his light combo finisher and heavy combo finisher. The power attack are his web pulls, and they aren't great for dealing damage, and you don't need them to deal damage in general combat, so light combo finishers and heavy combo it is. I use a piece like this for fighting Klaue, as it is great for damage against Klaue, as we need Vibranium to be the damage source, and greatly helps with all the Klaue minions with the red shields, as you can generally apply Vibranium to those guys in a single heavy combo finisher. Next, we have this collection of Tachin Surge gear, which has the Tachin Surge perk to give us more damage to our status related attacks. This one is the one I use for mobbing, as the gamma can apply really easy to general mobs and can spread between them, setting them up for our drone to take them out. And we are using all 3 damage stats, as it is more for general use. Next, we have this Shock 1. Shock will give us increased crit chance, not crit damage. I see a lot of people get that confused. The crit chance, however, is still fantastic now. Damage buff has lost the huge amount of crit chance. So, this one is what I use for bosses, as double stats can roll higher, and as I have shown, the might doesn't do a whole lot against bosses. It's just valor and precision to push our drone and heavy combo finisher as high as possible. Then finally I do have this Cryo one. This can be more of a middle ground between the two. If it's a boss that takes status easier, the Cryo can be nice for freezing them and can work okay on mobs as well. So this one also has all 3 damage stats. This, in my opinion, is the worst of the 3, but you can make this work if it's all you have. Finally, we have this Faultless Pulse legendary. Spidey has some of the worst stun damage in the game against Klaue, so you will see throughout this video I have a couple of bits of gear to help with that. This is one of them. It is defensive stats, as damage doesn't matter when we are stunning Klaue. This is one of those pieces you don't really need, but for those guys that want to be the best Spidey, I recommend having one of these just to switch to when stunning Klaue. Next, we have the slot 2. This is where our drone will be picking up the status from. For starters, we have this raid piece with a faultless buff activating our damage buff on melee attacks and vibranium on our web shooters. This will make our drone deal vibranium damage. I do really like the leak on this piece as well offering some nice R of effect damage. Combining this with a perk breaker artifact can produce some pretty beefy numbers, so if you have I would use it. It also has again R3 damage stats. This is your bread and butter ranged piece for Spidey. You can run a Sonic version of this, however for the rest of the game, as you will see later, we have a vibranium payload in our artifact slot, so the Sonic version can combine for some real nice battery damage. However, in the raid I would always run vibranium. The only other slot 2 I like to use is this perfect unicorn piece. While ranged Spidey is not better than the melee one for the Shuri room, and when shooting Klaue in the eye you need a ranged build to fully help your team, so something like this is amazing. Touch-in Surge does boost your damage even when shooting the vibranium in the Klaue room, but only if you have the web shooter as cosmic, so a piece like this is as good as it gets. You can just use a standard targeted buff piece if you don't want to farm for this unicorn piece, but you won't be effective. Also, if you are not sure what I mean when I talk about shooting Klaue in the eye, I will leave a link in the description for a video where I explain that. Spidey with a full precision build can solo guarantee you will at least skip one phase of this part of the raid, and you helping out could be the difference between a 1 phase or 2 phase. I know there is people who don't like switching up their build mid-mission, but if that's you, I'm sorry, you will just be a lot less effective than those of us that plan for each encounter. For the slot 3 we have already gone over the slot 3 in the public Menace, but I will point out when I switched to my ranged build, I will use something like this to go all out glass cannon and get as much valor and precision as possible. I do also have this reactive stun payload piece I use again to help stun Klaue at the end of the raid. Apart from these two, the public Menace is your go-to. Finally, we have the slot 4, and I again have a couple of different pieces for different parts of the raid. First, we have the Spidey God Roll from the raid. This is a rare piece, but even just having one of these perks goes great on any Spidey build. If you can be lucky like me and get them on the same piece with perfect stats, you are going to be seeing a huge bump in your Spider-Man damage. I don't think they need too much explaining. Huge damage boost on the drone and huge damage boost against webbed enemies, two things Spidey is going to be doing a whole lot, and again all 3 damage stats. If you don't have this, I would say the drone is the more important perk out of the two, as webbing enemies doesn't work on bosses, which is also why I have this piece. This one swaps out the webbed perk for Sonic Breaker. This will be much better against bosses that are not Klaue, but is still useful against Klaue if you know a little trick you can do to the drone that will be at the end of this video. As an alternative, you can use the spectacular slot 4 that will let your drone be out longer and gives you another web bomb. I would advise the legendary version, as the Berserker perks are a lot more useful than the health regeneration perk on the exotic version. These can come from villain sectors. Finally, I do also use the public Menace visor that comes from vaults. I use this when I switched to my precision build in the Shuri room and when fighting Klaue the first time. Mine has the old higher stat spray patch, so has a nice spread of valor, precision and some resolve, so I don't need to go completely glass cannon when switching to this build. If you are confused about when I switch up my build, don't worry, there will be a part 2 to this video with a full guide of how it all works when moving through the raid. The perks on this piece are also great, as we have a chance to get even more orbs, and the taunt can be great when pulling enemies to the middle when you first fight Klaue. Then we have the artifacts. First, we have the Valor ones with power attacks. You may be wondering why I would opt to use power attacks. It's because for some reason the drone's shots seem to be classed as power attacks and therefore get a damage boost from these artifacts. I actually only recently discovered this after I filmed all the clips from the intro, and after realizing this have got my drone shots on the super adaptoid up to 750,000. While one of these was found randomly, the other, I have an offline date for you can find in the description and in my gear sheet. Also be sure to join my Discord, as I usually post these there as I find them. So yes, if you want to maximize drone damage, run power attacks on your ISO. It's a free 20% damage bonus you may as well have. However, If I am in a team that are not applying a whole lot of vibranium or running the build where I have Sonic on the drone, this raid artifact is amazing, giving us vibranium payloads on melee attacks. The perk breaker is also nice, giving my leak on my slot 2 a nice damage boost and very good overall stats. This is a nice piece to run when going through the raid, but not really needed against Klaue, as the drone and a couple of web shots can apply vibranium super easy, so just going all out Valor is better. This is better for the adaptoid though if you like going for OLT speed runs like me. Oh, and if you didn't already think this build is over the top, I have 2 of these. This second one has precision on it, so it better for bosses. We have a triple precision for the ranged builders, going 1 triple precision and 1 triple valor will give you better overall damage. Then finally I have used 2 different cosmic surge artifacts which I use in different places. For mob clearing I like to use this one that can give me a cosmic surge burst from simply defeating enemies. It also has a bit of proficiency. Spidey doesn't need a whole lot, and just adding this little bit can be nice. Finally, for those situations where you have to go to the back in the Klaue fight, I have this reactive cosmic surge with pure defensive stats, making it almost impossible for me to go down. I also will say having a triple proficiency on hand is very good for the Forge and Shuri room. You will see proof of this in part 2, but for those parts of the raid you want to almost guarantee your perks are activating and your damage buff is activating. This much proficiency is total overkill, but for those parts of the raid we need our build to be reliable, and our perks not activating or not critting in those parts is going to leave you stuck. This advice can apply to a lot of other characters as well, so get yourself one of these. You will really see how much good they are in part 2 of this video. Finally, we have the skills. For the drone the most important skill to use is high emissions. This is the perk that is going to give you a huge boost to your damage. On the next tree all 3 are pretty good and it's user choice. The extra status build up from the top perk can be nice as it lets your drone web enemies up easier, so you can get all your webbed related bonuses faster. The class clown perk can be good for bosses as it can draw their attention off you and towards the drone. Then finally my favorite of the 3 simply gives the drone a chance to create a bunch of orbs to help you recycle your heroics over and over. For the assault heroic it doesn't really matter, use what you find fun, as all 3 variants are pretty good and they all have their uses depending on where you are playing. I do however always go with supercharge. The heroic doesn't deal a lot of damage, so you may as well just have them faster. For the ultimate spider signal is probably your best all-rounder, providing some health for your team to pick up on. The other 2 are better offensive option if you are playing more solo related content and don't need the healing. I like to use the perk that extends this after defeating enemies. I'm just going to flash over all these mastery perks. We are mostly just looking for perks that give us critical chance and give us more ways to create heroic orbs. I know this build is very minutes/maxed and not achievable for the average player, so I will leave a link to some of my older easier to make builds in the description. But for this build I wanted to show him at his very best with all the god rolls you can get. Finally, I will leave you with my 2 most recent test your might clears that are a nice representation of my build in action. And by now most people will have stopped watching, so for you guys that have stuck through to this part, here is a little trick you can use on Spidey to get multiple status effects on your drone. The developers of this game love to fix bugs for characters that are not that strong. Meanwhile Thor still has triple god blasts and Iron Man can rocket cheese anything. So, I am hiding this at the end of this video so it can go under the radar. If you skip to the end of the harm room clears, it'll show how to do it. You can put Sonic and Vibranium on the drone at the same time, making it auto battery and benefit from those Sonic Breaker perks. hello again. So to do this you need to start with the status you want to put on another piece on first. So for me I want to put this sonic status effect on this vibranium piece. So, we equip this sonic piece and start a mission. I always use this drop zone. One the missions has started. Go over to these enemies and activate your drone, and then straight after open your inventory and change to your other piece. In my case it's this vibranium one. Then close your menu and restart checkpoint, then go back to the enemies and your drone will apply sonic and vibranium. If you saw this part, leave me a little wink emoji in the comments. Peace out guys, and thanks for watching.
Talking about. Now, and for my next trick,